Thank you all for coming out tonight. Are you all been enjoying this beautiful fall weather?
Yes.
Are you ready for Tuesday morning? No. Me either.
Supposed to have a freeze or a 20.
A hard freeze. Tuesday
no.
morning. Yes.
No.
Yeah, so get ready. And I have some little perennials sitting out because I'm not gonna have time to plant. So my thing is I'm gonna put them where it's protected. I'm gonna water them really well because I'm not coming home until Tuesday. I'm leaving in the morning. So anyway, thank you all for coming out. You're in for a treat tonight. We have Sandy, Extension Master Gardener volunteer, Sandy Yakob. She's been a Master Gardener for 20+ years. And she dabbles in a lot of different aspects of horticulture. She's big into azaleas and rhododendron, and she all knows about hydroponics. So you're in for a treat to hear her talk tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you to everybody for coming out this evening. Tonight, we're going to kind of focus on beginning hydroponics. This is kind of a get your feet wet kind of event this evening. We're going to cover a variety of different kinds of hydroponic systems. And of course, we're going to get really solid and talk hard about crack key systems. So my goal tonight is when you leave here, you're going to be confident to go home and do this for yourself, right? This will be sweet, I promise. All right, to get started, anybody who's ever heard me talk knows that I love to tell stories. So first, though, what is hydroponics? The process of growing plants without the benefit of soil, period. That's all that this means. So we're going to do a quick history. Boom, boom. It is 1860, and America is about to be a hot mess. But in Germany, two scientists, Dr. Van Sack and Dr. Knopf, are proving that they can grow plants in only a nutrient solution consistently, reproducibly, and into maturity. Now, these guys, they don't care about farming. They don't care about gardening. They care about science. And that's all they care about. And they're developing solutions to be able to grow these plants so they can help other scientists make this happen. Now, Sachs himself actually goes forward to create a whole new discipline of studies, plant physiology. He's the first one. Knopf goes ahead and creates something called the Knopf solution, which is actually a very close derivative to what we use today for hydroponics. And he continues to do a ton of groundbreaking work on our friends in P and K. Roughly 70 years pass, and Dr. William Greike, a plant physiologist, thanks, Sachs, is actually starting to trial his first new method of growing vegetables. This method consists of planting them on rafts of wood shavings called excelsior, a byproduct of the wood industry, that are suspended over tanks of nutrient solution. As the plants grow in, the plants go up. The trials are successful. He's able to grow several vegetable crops, including some pretty kickin' 25-foot tomatoes. Time goes by, he coins the term hydroponics. Hydro, meaning the Greek word for water, and panos for work or labor. So it's actually labor of water. 10 years later, he writes a book called The Complete Guide to Soilless Gardening. You can still get a copy of it. And he is the father of all hydroponics. Now we're in the 40s, and the United States is in the middle of the World War II. They are finding it very difficult to get fresh produce to the men and women stationed at forward Pacific bases. So they reach out to a couple of Purdue biologists, Alice and Robert Whitrow. The Whitrows, and Alice has been doing a ton of work around light and plants and how they react. The Whitrows design, build, and ship hydroponic systems to all the forward bases. They're set up to run on just about any terrain and in any environment. Thanks to them, every single base is able to pull hundreds of pounds of fresh produce from a 10 by 12 square. Alice's work goes ahead to frame what NASA uses for their space farming plans today. After the war, hydroponics in the state is kind of a niche thing. So you come back from the war, There's a lot of very advanced and inexpensive fertilizer. So soil gardening continues up, soil farming continues up. And then we head into this, Disney World. Disney comes on into the hydroponic picture in the early 80s at Epcot and the land. Has anybody been on the ride, the land? Heck yeah, baby. Do you know they won't let you out of cars? I find that very disappointing. But they go ahead, and as part of the land, the idea is that hydroponics is the farming of the future, and they have a whole bunch of different setups. Today, Disney processes roughly 30 tons of hydroponic produce every year to serve at the park. Finally, we come in to 2000. Dr. Bernard Cracky, who is also a professor at the University of Hawaii, a job that must be so terrible. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for this guy. He goes ahead and he puts forth his first paper that starts to discuss the Cracky method of hydroponics. This is what really opens the door for home gardeners to be able to do hydroponics in their own backyards. So why do I tell you all this? Well, because it's important to know where you've been so you know where you are and where you're going to go. So why do all this? What are all these people all about? Well, the deal with hydroponics is that you can grow anywhere. You don't have to have a ton of space. You don't have to have any land. You don't have to have a lot of very specialized area. For everyone who has probably known at least one person in their life who might have been growing a semi-legal vegetable fruit that might have been in a closet somewhere. Yeah, you know you can grow hydroponically any place. The second, of course, is you can grow it year-round. Most hydroponics is indoors in a house and something that's heated. So the weather means nothing. The seasons are nothing. If you want to put tomatoes on the table at Christmas, you can certainly do that. In the hydroponic world, there are fewer pests, there are fewer diseases. Now, part of that is because they're generally in the house, so you probably don't have as many aphids running through your kitchen. But it does make things a lot easier for disease and pest control. And also because plants have unlimited access to nutrients, they tend to stay healthier. Healthier plants have fewer problems overall. They are completely accessible. You don't dig, you don't weed, there's not a lot of heavy lifting, there's not a lot of hard physical labor to get done, so they're great for folks that have mobility issues. Just a fantastic way to be able to garden all through that. A couple other things, of course, a lot of plants who are in a hydroponic system will mature faster than their soil-borne cousins. And again, that has to do with the amount of nutrients that are constantly available to them. And of course, just like the wet rose found, you can garden them any inhospitable place you want. Not an issue. Oh, I do want to say a couple things. One, if you are on Zoom and you're on, I can't see the chat. So please, if you can't hear me, or if I say something that sounds garbled, please let us know. Floyd is monitoring it so we can do it. The other thing is I tend to talk really fast. So people who are here in the room, if you either can't hear me, which I won't believe at all, or if what I say just seems to be garbled, please let me know. Sometimes my brain moves faster than my mouth. All right. Whoops, wrong way. Come on, baby. Here we go. When you start with your hydroponic journey, the first thing you want to think about is what do you want to grow and what do you want to get out of your system? Unlike other gardening where we go through all the conditions first and then we give you the tiny little list of plants that you can grow in that particular situation. In hydroponics, you get to start with the plants because you're the one setting the conditions. What the environment like is really up to you. Of course, while you're doing this, there are certain things you still want to keep in mind. How big is your plant going to be at maturity? If you want to grow the great pumpkin, Charlie Brown, you need to be sure that you've got enough room for that pumpkin to move. If you are going to grow things that have giant root systems, you need to be sure that your containers that you do this in are going to be big enough to hold it. If it's going to be something that needs a trellis or a structure, you need to be sure you've got a plan for where that's going to go in your dining room. If you want to go ahead and plant tomatoes that are indeterminate, or you're going to have them climb on your dining room chandelier, that's fantastic. That's whatever, but you just need to be planning for that. Time to harvest is important, and that just means how long are you going to be growing that plant until you can harvest it, just so you have an idea of how long that space is going to be used, what kind of container it's going to be, how much it's going to have to hold, etc. And then finally, what the nutrient environment needs of that specific plant. Plants have different needs, as you know, as gardeners. That part does not change any in hydroponics. So to make sure we have a quick reminder of what are the essentials of plant health, roots need nutrient, air, water, just like people do, right? Just like you need air, food, and water, so do roots. Reality, humans are just more complicated cucumbers. That's it. Like the stems and leaves still need light. Photosynthesis still happens regardless if you're growing hydroponically or in soil, and plants still need stem support. When you plant something in the ground, you're kind of like mounding him up, right? You're making sure his stem is nice and strong and moisture can run up and down it. You get good turgor, and that's what holds everything up. Hydroponics are the same way. So you still have to have a plan to support your plants. Right? Assess your conditions. When you are planning your hydroponic grow, and that's the term that's used in the hydro world, one, you need to have access to water and light. Light can be an artificial light source. This can be a sunny window. Whatever it is, it's going to be able to get your light if you're growing indoors. If you're growing outdoors, you still follow the same rules if you're soil gardening. If you're growing vegetables, you still need 6 hours. Always remember, if you are growing a plant for roots or for fruit, you need full sun. If you're growing it just for leaves, then you can have partial shade. So you'll need to know where to put your system. You'll also need to know where your available space is so everything can get big and healthy and do what it needs. So if you're going to go ahead again and grow something huge, then you might need to have additional space for it to run. You will need to do some sort of climate control. And what I mean by that, we'll talk about that more in depth, is once you are growing hydroponics indoors, once you're growing vegetables indoors, hydroponics, you really now have productive houseplants. And just like you have to have certain rules for houseplants, no drafts, no big open windows, same thing for this, right? You want to make sure that they have a good, comfortable environment to grow. If you are working outside, of course, you need to worry about the seasons. Rain, snow, that sort of thing are important. You do not want rain into your hydroponic system because it will throw off your pH and it will screw up your nutrient levels. Now, when I say outdoors, there's kind of a quasi thing here, right? There's outdoors, like out in a field that you can set things in. And then there's outdoors as if it being in a shed or a greenhouse or something like that. Either way, you still need to be prepared for changes of seasons if you're going to do this outside. If you are doing either for both of these, you need to have an idea of what budget is, and you also need to know what is your level of maintenance. How much time do you want to spend on this? Because depending on the system you have, you may be spending more or less time. And then finally, what do you want out of your system? If you are planning to grow commercially, right? You want to start your own small strawberry farm, that's fantastic. But your needs are going to be very different than if you just want to have 4 heads of lettuce that you can bring to the table every 3 weeks. That makes sense? So you want to think about those things. In the hydroponic world, we have 2 types of hydroponic systems, or you can think of them as families, active and passive. Active systems will require a pump, and they will usually require a timer. Now, a timer isn't something you have to have, but I promise you, after running up and down to cut on and off a pump every, say, 20 minutes for a couple of hours, you're going to get pretty sick of that. So you definitely want to have a timer in there. Active systems are more complicated overall, and they are generally more expensive to set up. They also require more frequent attention than passive systems. That doesn't mean they're bad or you shouldn't do one. That's not it at all. They're fantastic, but you just need to be aware that they're going to be a bit more work and a bit more complicated. There are a variety of active systems, all of which can be run by the home gardener. The first of those is DWC, or deep water culture. This actually comes in 2 flavors. One flavor is just a bigger tank. They're usually 6 to 8 to 12 inches deep. And in there, plants are suspended in there, and there's a bubbler, like an air stone. Something is oxygenating the water. In active systems, the water is always being oxygenated. The second type of DWCs is a raft system. Plants are set on a raft. It goes ahead and it hangs out on a pool of hydroponic solution. Sometimes they're butted up to each other, cheek to jowl, and sometimes they get to just float around, living their best lettuce lives. On thing. Has anybody ever been to the Matthews Farmers Market? Yes. Did everybody buy anything from a purveyor that used to be there, Tiga Hills? Mindy at Tiga Hills, she was awesome. Everything she grew was hydroponic. And if you went to go see her setup, she had pools that were about 30 feet by about 20 feet, and these rafts of lettuce just out there. It was very calming. It's very calming to be out there. But you can certainly do that. The second kind are ebb and flow systems. These simply work by having plants in pots that sit in a tray. It's also called a flooded platform system. Hydroponic solution is pumped up. It goes to a certain level, kind of swirls around, and drains out immediately. It's just an ebb and flow. It's like the ocean. The water comes up and goes away, and comes up and goes away. This works great for larger plants, but their systems are a little on the unwieldy side, maybe 4x4, 8x4, something like that. This is what the Wipros sent to the forward bases. So that's what they used primarily in the Pacific, were systems that were very similar to an ebb and flow system. The next type of this, which you've probably seen, if you've seen a hydroponic system, you've more than likely seen an NFT, or a nutrient film technique system. If you've seen pictures of pipes, white pipes with holes in them, and little lettuces sticking their heads out, those are generally NFT. They're super popular in commercial work. Strawberries are grown. Ohio State has a huge hydroponic college, for lack of a better term, and they do a huge strawberry class for commercial growers every year, and they are using NFT to do this. NFT systems are simply shallow trays. Plants are suspended in there, and at the very bottom, there's a constant running stream of nutrient. So the plants are always being submerged partially in nutrient, and it just goes ahead and circulates forever. And then the last kind of this that's really falls under the common kinds of actives are the drip bucket system. These are simply specialized buckets, Dutch buckets you may have heard of, or Beto buckets. Nutrient drips into them, runs through them, through the plant roots. It's inert type of medium, coco coir, perlite, something. Comes down to the bottom, comes out of a pipe on the end of it, and it either gets recirculated or it gets discarded. These are complicated. Yes, ma'am.
How do you ensure that the level of nutrients stays appropriate since the plants are constantly taking stuff up?
That's a great question. So it depends on the system. You as the gardener will set the timer to determine how much water is going to come up and say an ebb and flow, and how long that's going to run. You as the gardener are going to set the timer that's going to go ahead and push the pump that will pull nutrient solution around the very bottom of an NFT system for a particular amount of time. For a DWC, if they just stay in there all the time, they've always got access to nutrients. It's just the water's being oxygenated. And then finally, in a bucket system, the gardener determines how long that pump is going to run and how hard and rich the nutrient is. And we're going to talk for a long time about nutrients. So we'll get to that. The last kind that is getting to be more popular at home are aeroponics. Aeroponics right now are mostly available via kits. I haven't seen a lot of DIYs on these. What that is you've got a raft kind of plants that's set up vertically, and mist blows on them. And that mist is full of nutrients. Disney uses these by the gobs because you can grow a lot of plants in a very small space. Yes, ma'am.
They do that at the barn in
Yes.
the
The innovation bar, right? They do that. What they do there are two things. Is one, the guy who has the specialized garden, who's kind of over there, he's running aeroponics upstairs, In the main barn, they are running aquaponics. They are using fish, which doesn't really fall under these categories, but they have fish in there. Fish in the tank make fish waste. Fish waste is pumped up, floods the tables where the plants are set, floods the pipes where the plants are, and drains back down. So it's kind of a hybrid system. And there are other hybrid systems of hydroponics, but this is kind of the large groups of how these work on the active side. Right? The thing about active hydroponics that is great is that runs pretty constantly. However, anybody here ever run a misting system? Mist of some kind? Yeah. Here's the deal about misters. The same thing about this. The minute you get in the car and pull out of your driveway to go away for the weekend, it's going to clog, right? They're going to clog, they're going to quit, the timer's going to bark. All these things can happen, which is why they require so much more care and maintenance to check on than a passive system. So let's talk about those. Whoops, come on. Hello. There we go. Passive systems. Passive systems have no moving parts. They rely on either capillary action, gravity, or static water. They're usually inexpensive and easy to use. They work great for off-grid situations or places where you don't have power, and they require little management. Of these, there are two varieties that come up. One are wicking beds or wicking pots. All that is there's a reservoir in the bottom of a container. There's wick of some kind, either rope or soil or perlite or something that will pull water up to the root system of plants that are planted in the top. This works great for outdoor plantings, vegetables, all the things, fantastic. The other kind, of course, is the Kratky method, where plants are suspended in a static liquid solution, right? No movement in there, no oxygenation. And that's what we're going to focus mostly on. So far, so good? It's a lot, isn't it? I know. All right, so let's get crackying. And you can't imagine how long I've been waiting to make that joke. Let's get crackying. I think we ought to try to get that to be a thing. Kratky method is the simplest, least expensive, and most maintenance-free hydroponic setup for the home garden. It just is. It's the easiest way to do it. Well, what do you need? If you are in Kratky, what do you need? You need a container to hold plants. You need a lid to either support them or to block out light. You need a method to physically support the plants that are going to be held in there. You need a light, of course. You need nutrient specific for your crop. You need conductivity meters. A pH meter and an EC meter are amazingly handy, and you will absolutely need and want them. And then finally, you need plants. That's helpful. Just to make sure, when Kratky set his system up, the idea was for it to grow short-lived plants with shallow root systems. The idea is it would be very quick. Lettuce, leafy greens, herbs, things like that. It is not necessarily designed to grow things like grapes, right? Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? It just means it takes a little bit more effort, and you'll have to kind of keep a closer eye on it, but you can certainly do. So let's talk about some of it. So containers. In the Kratky world, it does not matter, right? You can make a container out of anything that is going to hold water, and you can get your plants to suspend in, right? And this can be things like styrofoam coolers. This is a plain styrofoam cooler. My husband gets these every couple of months with medication. I never know what to do with them. Boom, Kratky. You can use tub trucks. You can use plastic totes. You can use anything that will hold water and nutrient. You do want to avoid metal containers that may rust or flake. Galvanized steel does not work very well in this situation, but pretty much anything else. You need some way to block light from the top, and that will either be a lid of literally any kind, or if you're growing your plants from the top, the plants themselves will kind of block light. The reason is because nutrient solution plus light equals algae. And you don't want to have to be scrubbing and just chasing algae the whole time. So you want to go ahead and have something that will block it. For your containers, you want them to be opaque in some method. If you've ever watched YouTube folks that are doing crack key with mason jars, they usually have them in a sock or something like that, and that keeps the light from coming into that. Oh, let's see, me sure I'm good. Yeah, opaque light. Oh, support for plants. So when your plants are in here, they need to have, they're not gonna just stand on their roots, right? They can't really do that. So what you need to have is something that's going to hold them safely and comfortably and allow their roots to grow out. Couple of ways, net cups, right? Like these. I'm trying to make sure, hopefully the folks in Zoom can see this thing. Net cups like these, homemade net cups, works great. This is just a plant cup that I cut additional holes into, or every DIY's favorite, pool noodles. Pool noodles might possibly be the most handy thing ever, right? So you put your plant in here, you close it up, it goes into the system, either one or two, and it holds them perfectly in place. And as they grow, it skitches, so it doesn't cut them off. These are genius. So absolutely, something like that that's going to hold them into place. Finally, you need something if you're using net cups for the plants to sit in, right? If you are not growing in rock wool, which I just realized I forgot, if you're not growing in rock wool, you're just growing seedlings in normal ways, or maybe you've gotten the plant through some other way, it needs to have some sort of substrate. You can't just take the root out and plop him in the cup because he's going to sit there in too deep and there's nothing to kind of hold him up. He's going to be like, oh, this isn't what I want to do. So there are a lot of options. One thing that works great are these. These are clay pebbles, little clay pebbles. They work fantastic. You can use them 100,000 times over. They're inert. They work fantastic.
And they're cheap.
And
Buy-
cheap.
Buy a bag like this for $10.
And you'll have it forever and ever and ever. And those work great. They also don't break down. They don't get out of the system. They're very clean. So you'll need something like that to get your container start working. Next, light and environment. You will need either a sunny window or an artificial light to be able to make sure your plants can still photosynthesize and do what they need to do. If you are growing under an artificial light, you're looking at 16 hours a day, give or take, and then they're off. You always want to give plants darkness, right? They need at least 6 hours of darkness, all plants do, so they can do root growth and they can rejuvenate, and then they can have light. So they want to have some sort of light in them. If you are growing seeds today at home, the same window you put your seeds on should be enough light. The same seed bay, if you're using a light to grow seeds, that works great. You don't have to go out and get anything new or different if you've already got something for seeds. Little plant lights that kind of like the ones that you screw in my bathroom at the house, right? One of the bathrooms at the house, which is the one off the kitchen, I have replaced all the lights in the fixture with grow lights, just little grow light bulbs. My husband cannot figure out why it's so weirdly bright in there. However, it works great because then I can put plants in there and just turn on the light and close the door, right? And there, I got a nice area that plants can hang out in and has enough light. If you are growing this outside, and this would hold true if you've got a wicking bed or you've got some sort of hydroponic setup that you set out there, or if you do these little coolers and you just carry them outside for the season, fantastic. You have to follow the same rules. If they are going to be growing roots or fruit, you'll need full sun. If you're doing leafy greens, they can get away with partial shade. No sweat, either way. When you have things indoors, remember, they're just like houseplants at that point. No drafts, right? Don't set them near doors that are going to open a lot and they're going to get cold, particularly if you're growing something like tomatoes or peppers that are a little fussy about that kind of thing. So make sure they don't have any drafts, keep them away from heaters and radiators, all the usual things. Remember, your house is still going to be darker than they are accustomed to and warmer than they are accustomed to. So you may have to think about drier for certain that they're accustomed to. So you have to plan for that. Same as you do when you bring in your house plants. If you have a fan, it's a great thing to kind of blow on them because one, it gives them nice strong stems, just like you blow on tomato seedlings or anything else. The other thing it does is it makes it hard for flying pests to land on them because they get caught in the air. The other thing is it helps plants grow faster and they pull up more nutrient because the air on them requires them to transpire. You know what transpiration is, right? When plants lose moisture through their leaves. And then also it helps cool things down. So if you're running a lamp that might not be an LED and it gets warm, this kind of cools that air around the plants down. And of course, it gives them good air movement and area around them so that they stay good and healthy. Is everybody asleep now? Because I'm doing it. Getting sleepy. Okay. So you certainly can do that. Finally, when you are putting hydroponics out somewhere, particularly if it's going to be in a traffic part of your house, remember they are full of water. Have a damage mitigation plan. And what I mean by that is if you have got a tank that has 6 gallons of water in it, you'd be surprised how much floor that can cover, right? So make sure it's someplace where it's not going to get bumped or jostled or sent over the side. You do not want to have to clean that up. It's just hard and everything. Keep it where, in my house, if it's somewhere where the dog is going to pass by, there's a huge chance at some point he's going to take it out. So you want to have some place where it's going to be safe. Let's see. Now, solution and monitoring. Hydroponics is easy. Solution is complicated, but it's not hard. And once you do this a couple times, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is simple. But the first few times, it's going to be a little daunting. Hydroponic fertilizer plus water equals nutrient solution. So when I say nutrient solution, that's what I mean. And it goes by a dozen names: nutrient solution, hydroponic solution, fertilizer, whatever. But that's what this is. You want to, of course, always start with clean water. I know that sounds like a duh kind of thing, but every so often somebody will be like, hey, you know what would be great? What if I got a pitcher of water out of this lake, pond, puddle, stream, downspout? No. And the reason why is because we are growing in static water. Static water means it's not moving. There is a very fine line between static and stagnant, right? We want to be on this side, on the static side. So we definitely want to use clean water. Now, if you're on municipal water in Monroe or in a whole bunch of other North Carolina counties, your water is treated with both chlorine and ammonia as to go ahead and make it disinfected. This does not off gas, right? A lot of times we're like, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take a gallon of water, pull it out of my kitchen sink, and then let it sit overnight. This does not make that off gas. So with some of this, you will want to look at trying to do some sort of carbon filter. If you've got a filter in your refrigerator, fantastic. Or maybe you keep a side filter that comes through like a charcoal filter, great. If you're using a Brita, right, those pitchers, those goofy pitchers, fantastic. All that will work. If you really want to get super fancy, you can do reverse osmosis and all of that kind of stuff. But you will want to use a filtered water just to try to get some of that chlorine and ammonia out of there. There's also a tablet, dechlorination tablets that you can get at aquarium stores, and probably from Chewy, where I think you can get just about everything, and they will have that as well. Always use fertilizer that is formulated for hydroponics. Now, I know what y'all are thinking. Wait, isn't that blue stuff pretty water soluble, right? Yes and no. So if you go ahead and you use a soil-based fertilizer that starts with M and turns everything blue, with that, usually, and that's usually like your fingers and whatever you have on and all that kind of stuff. The issue with that is accustomed to working in the soil. Soil has buffering capability. Buffering is like an offensive line. Its whole job is to protect the quarterback from bad things, right? Water has none of that, which kind of looks like the Panthers on a Sunday, right? I'm gonna step out of the way. Way you go, right? So water has no buffering, soil does. So a soil-based fertilizer like Miracle-Gro is accustomed to having that. It can have wild swings in pH. The other thing is it uses an awful lot of salt to get water soluble, and you may get some burning, you may get some leaf curl, just a little too much salt than what you want, because again, there's nothing to buffer it in water. And then also, they don't have all of the minerals that you really want in hydroponic fertilizer. And hydroponic fertilizer has to provide everything because water brings nothing to the party. So soil fertilizer doesn't have to do that because it knows that soil is going to take care of some of this. So always use a hydroponic fertilizer that's made for hydroponics. There's a dozen kinds out there. You can use a water-based one, you can use a powder-based one, whichever one you like. The one that I have been using is a powdered-based one. This one is for fruits and vegetables. I'm sorry, it's for vegetables and tomatoes. Works fantastic. Regardless of which one you use, you're not using a lot of it, right? Because you're not a commercial grower. So you don't have to get this in a 25-pound bag. A pound bag will last you a very long time. A couple quarts in the liquid kind will last you a very long time. So these will all work fine. The nice thing about it is also they are formulated to dissolve very, very, very quickly, which is what you want. The other thing is, as you are working in crack heat, you really need to use a synthetic fertilizer. Now, I know a lot of folks, they're like, I try to garden only organically, and I dig you. However, again, in our world of crack heat, water isn't moving. If you are running an active system, ebb and flow, DWC, those two are the best for non-synthetic fertilizers. You can absolutely run organics. The thing with organics is there are some larger particulates that are in them. The other thing is they also have microbes, all the things you want. Well, what happens to microbes in a solution that has no oxygen? They die. What then happens? They smell bad. They smell bad. Anybody have a compost heap get away from them? Yeah. You know what it smells like? Yeah. So that's not what you want. Synthetics, of course, don't do that. So hit it with a synthetic fertilizer and use that instead. Measuring is super important when you're doing this. Does anybody bake by chance? Bake? Oh, maybe you. Baking? Nice, good for you. What's the difference between baking and cooking?
You have to be precise.
To be precise, right? Cooking is an art. Baking is a science, right? Gardening, soil gardening is an art. Hydroponics is a science. And so you have to measure things correctly. Get yourself a good set of measuring spoons. You don't have to throw them away or only use them for hydroponics. You can use them, you can just feed them to the dishwasher and they'll be fine. But make sure that you are following the rules. The package or the manufacturer of your nutrient will tell you what you should add. They're going to give you the ratios that you need. And that will help you as you go ahead and you make fertilizer. Does that make sense? So check them out. They'll tell you exactly how much you need to have for a gallon, right? For this, it's a tablespoon of base nutrient, it's half a teaspoon of Epsom salts, and it's a teaspoon of calcium. That's what they set for a gallon. So that's what you're going to do, at least to start. And then from there, you can kind of decide, okay, if I do this, my numbers are a little high, I can cut that down, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute, more than you're ever going to want to know. But when you're doing this, follow the rules on this. pH and EC are crucial. In the soil world, you can swag some of this, right? How many people hunker down and check the pH of their ground every single time they put a plant in it? Nobody freaking does that. However, though, in this world, you have to. You just do. So there in the soil world, again, there's buffering. There's a lot of other things going on. It will allow you to get away with a multitude of sins. Hydroponics does not do that. So you need to go ahead and make sure you have your EC and pH range. Don't rush through this, at least the first time, right? I used to work with a guy, he would say, slowly, slowly, I am in a rush. And that's how this is, right? You want to work deliberately and you want to work with purpose, right? I am a squirrel, right? Everything catches my eye, right? It is. I I know everyone in this room finds that super hard to believe. But it is absolutely like that. In this, I have to like work hard to like pay freaking attention. And so you will want to do that. Don't be like me. All right, EC, let's talk about electrical conductivity. Electrical conductivity will tell you how strong your nutrient is. When nutrient goes into water, it breaks down into ions, and those ions all have electrical pulses. Electrical conductivity measures the number of ions that are there, and that will tell you how strong your solution is. And this is something you will need to know. And of course, science girl in the corner, tell me if I'm wrong, because you won't hurt my feelings. Different plants will have different EC ranges. There's a range, just like in pH, there is a range of where it is you need to be. It's marked with a meter, an EC meter. These are not expensive. What did I just do? Good. These are not necessarily expensive. You definitely want to have a set to get started for this, for sure. And you handle it, you adjust EC by either adding more base nutrient or more water. If it's too high for what you need, you add water. If it's too low, you add a little bit more base until it comes up to where you need. You want to get this right before you get into pH. So you do this first, and then you go do pH. And we've got some steps in here on how to create nutrient that we'll hit.
Is your unit there dual purpose? Does it do pH and EC?
This one does not. These are two separate ones. You can absolutely get dual purpose ones, and you can go any price on those, right? These are pretty inexpensive. There's a New Zealand company, Blue.
Yeah, they're
They're very nice. Yes, yes, you know, whoops, sorry, you know you've bought one, right? You know it. Yeah.
When you're measuring ions, though, it doesn't tell you what ion it is, only that it's got ions there. So you kind of have to know what you're adding in there.
You do know.
That can't be a question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What Sonia? So Sonia is our science girl. She's a real life chemist, which always makes me nervous when I remotely talk about it. And what she was saying is that EC meters cannot tell you what kind of ions, the ones that we usually use, cannot tell you what kind of ions they are, just that they are ions. So you do have to have an idea of what is in your nutrient. Is that right?
Yes, and water also can carry some of those ions depending on your water source.
That is correct too. And so when you are calculating this out, you do your EC, it's going to give you the overall number of ions that it, and that gives you the idea of what it is, where you are in range.
Do you know what it measures? Is it parts per million? Or
It can, you can do both. You can do parts per million, or you can see it, and it's, I'll think of it here in a minute. I really will. Some,
I think the one I had was parts per million.
yes, this one will do both. You can do one that's parts per million, and the other is something. I'll have to remember it, but yes. The other item for this is pH, which is my understanding is potential for hydrogen and water. For that, this is the same as pH that you would do in soil gardening. It determines the acidity and alkalinity by counting the number of hydrogen that it sees, hydrogen ions it sees. It affects how plants absorb nutrients. So if you have your EC right, you've got your nutrient at the right level, at the right thickness that it needs to be, and I'm trying to grab the word in my head, but you don't have the pH set right, it may not matter, right? Those plants may not be able to touch any of that stuff. It's like a door. So you want to be sure that you get both right. pH is measured logarithmically. So if you are supposed to be a 6, but you're showing an 8, you're not 2 points off. You're a lot more off. So you definitely want to dial it in as close as you can. And mostly vegetables are in a range, and it's usually 5.5 to 6.5 in a lot of cases, kind of neutral, a little bit more acidic. Be prepared to adjust pH. Be prepared to adjust both, but you generally will need to adjust pH. Even if your pH out of your water is neutral, if you use a distilled water, perhaps, and you get a neutral pH on that, once you add your nutrient, your pH is going to change, and you will need to raise it up or down And that's usually done through a control kit and through a couple of different solutions, pH up and pH down. And it doesn't take very much of this to make it move. So be prepared for that. All right. No. So how do you do this? Well, first, you're going to start with clean room temperature water. A lot of things prefer to work in room temperature water, including me, right? I don't want to be cold. I hate to step into a cold shower. I don't want plants to do that either. So you want to start with room temperature water. You're going to follow the instructions that the manufacturer tells you of how to mix your nutrient. Many manufacturers will tell you what order you want it in. Most nutrient kits come in 3 parts, and they will tell you how it is. For the kind that I use, it's base nutrient, then it's Epsom salts, magnesium, and then it's calcium. If you don't do it in the order they tell you, they may not work. They may lock each other out. So follow that rule. If you are doing a powder, it works out handily to take part of your water, heat it to lukewarm. Again, if you bake bread, it's the same type of heating to lukewarm that you would have for yeast. Dissolve it in there and then add it back to your reservoir. That is just makes them stirs in a little quicker, has them dissolve a little easier. Back into your reservoir, stir it completely. After you mix it, let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes. This allows it all to quit swirling around, makes all the nutrient kind of hang out and get stable, and then take your measurements. When you take your measurement, you're going to wait till your whatever method you're using stops running. So if you put your EC meter in and it starts ticking it down or ticking it up, just hold it till it holds still for 10 seconds. Eventually it will settle on a number. That will help you tell you what your range is. If you get a higher reading than what you want, so lettuce is about 1.2 EC, peppers are about 2 EC. So if you are, say, you're getting 2, but you need to be at 1.2, you will add water, add a couple of cups of water, let it sit, stir it, let it sit, test it, see where you are, add a couple of, whatever it is you need. It's a slow step process, at least the first time. After you do it once or twice, then you'll know where you want to start with the next time. So if you follow your instructions for this time, I did exactly like the package said. I added a tablespoon of base. I was way high. Next time, I'm going to add maybe a teaspoon of base. Do the math accordingly, and then go from there. So it'll help you kind of get a feel for how this is going to work. Yes, so that's cover. Let me yes. I'm talking faster than I'm reading. Once you get it into range, then you go ahead and look at your pH, right? You've got your EC set, you'll use your pH meter, you'll check your pH, you'll see where you are. If you need to go up, if you need to go down, you can use pH up or pH down. Again, make sure it's not moving, let it sit there. And do this again in small increments. pH up and down work really, really fast. So in that case, it doesn't take much. So then you might start with half a teaspoon and then see, stir it in, wait, measure it, see where you are. And then you can make numbers for that. You don't want to put too much and then on the other side of the range, and then you have to add pH up, say, the other side. It's like watching me cut, right? I'm on this side of the hole. I'm on that side of the hole. You don't want to do that. You want to go ahead and kind of inch it down. And again, once you do this a couple of times, it doesn't become that daunting. Then you're like, oh yeah, I got this. Just the first couple times, so it's a little different. It's a different way to do it. Nutrient generally holds a couple of weeks if it's stored in a dark, cool place, not the refrigerator, but somewhere that is just kind of in a dark spot, out of direct sunlight, and it will hold. All of your equipment that you use to measure things will be washed, used for something else. They're not anything that has to be single purpose in this. And then, of course, keep your nutrient ingredients as they tell you. If you're for powders, it does not matter. But if it's a liquid, it might say, hey, store in a cool, dark place, right? Common sense. Don't leave it on the dashboard of your car. Does that make sense? Finally, you get to add some plants. Now, plants for hydroponics can come from anywhere. You can grow them from seed. You can get them at the nursery. You can buy them at the grocery store. You can dig them out of your neighbor's yard. All of those things are game. The keys to is when you move a plant into a hydroponic situation is you want to get as much soil off the roots as you can, right? Because one, it will muddy up the inside of your container and for your system, but also is you don't want to bring in by accident any bad guys, any pathogens or anything that might be on the roots. And finally, sometimes when roots are still packed with soil or medium, as they goes ahead and breaks down, you will get root rot. And you do not want that. The roots get brown and slimy and the plant does not survive. So in this case, you definitely want to root wash as much as you can. If you're remotely concerned about where the plant came from, or if it was outside of the yard, you may want to give those roots a quick sketch with some 3% food grade peroxide that is really diluted. So diluted hydrogen peroxide, food grade, makes a great disinfectant for roots and equipment and everything else. Sketch, 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 sketch. Let them sit for a bit and then rinse them off, and then they're ready to go into the system. So go ahead and keep those clean. If you are planting in the cups, the key word is gentle. Remember, you've got all these exposed roots now, so you want to get some pebbles in there, get your roots in there, gently put pebbles around him, firm him up, and then drop him down into the system, however it is that yours is going to work. If you're doing something like this, where it's from the top, if it's something like a tower system, where it's from the side, or if it's in the side of it, any of those. Depending on how your system works will depend on if you add nutrient before or after, right? If you have a system like this, where, whoops, dropped, let me, I'm good. You know what's going to happen now. Oh, sorry, Flick. If you have a system like this, you're going to put your nutrient in first and then put your plants on top, right? Because you're not going to, how does that work? If you've got a system like the other kind, where maybe the plants are sticking in the side of it, you can add your plants first and then pour your nutrient on top. Gently, down the side, you know, you're not blah, 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 gently, 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 so it doesn't shake a bunch of stuff and so you don't damage any of your by accident. Plants are tough, surprisingly tough, but still, you don't want to accidentally break something you don't need to. Once they get in there, if you are doing collars, get your collars on your plants generally before you edge them in, and they will do just fine. If you are going to do multiple types of plants, make sure they all have the same pH and EC needs to be in the same container. Just like we tell you in the soil gardening world, if you're going to be planting out there, you want to group like things together, things that need the same sun, see the same amount of water. Same thing in hydroponics. If you are growing plants together, you want to be sure they all have the same EC and pH needs, or somebody in that box is going to be really, really unhappy. And you don't monitor them as they grow, right? As they go, they will take up nutrient. You want them to. That's the cracky way. The cracky way is plants take up nutrient and create that air gap at the top. So watch them, let them go ahead and take up nutrient. Maintenance. Anytime you see something weird happen, it could be disease or it could be a nutrient thing. If you start to see leaves curl, if leaves start to change color, if you see start to randomly fall off, get your monitors and go check it. Because in the case, it's probably an EC issue. Go ahead and check that first. If you have an issue where your EC is cranking higher than it should, then you can add water to it to bring it back down. Sometimes plants are jerks. And when they will pull up more water than nutrient. It's a condition called being more thirsty than hungry. And plants will pull up the water and leave the nutrient ions there, and your EC will suddenly be 7, right? Something that's way high that will burn a plant, right? You know how when we tell folks, hey, if you get new mulch, make sure that it's good and composted so that when it lays down, it doesn't burn your plant? same deal, right? So it's all that nitrogen. So with that, you want to kind of check that to see, and then add water to bring that back into line. When your reservoir drops, you can re-add to the reservoir, but you want to do it appropriately. Take your EC, see where you are, and if it's high, add water. If it's not, then you can go ahead and add nutrient solution. Never refill more than 2/3. And the reason for that is because by the time it drops down, the thought is that that top set of roots are now air roots, and their job is to pull oxygen. And if you cover them up with liquid, they will drown. So, and that's not what you want, because then your plant will suffer and your production will suffer. So never fill up. When Kratky made his system, his idea was that you would never refill the reservoir. That by the time the reservoir was empty, it would be time to harvest the plants. And that was mostly the case when you were growing lettuces or spinach or bok choy. But it's not the case when you're growing peppers and tomatoes. And so for that, we will need to prepare to refill your reservoir as needed when it gets down between 1/4 and 1/3, just like you do your gas tank. And then make sure that you don't fill it all the way. You want to leave that top third open for the air gap so that air continues to move around the roots, which allows those plants to live. Does that make sense? So that is probably the hardest and fastest rules out there. Karen, harvest, once you get your plants in and your stuff is set, well, they're just a regular plant. And you can go ahead and treat them as you would any other plant, right? If you have to do pruning or you need to do a trellis, great. Checking your levels. You don't have to do this constantly. You don't have to run down there every 30 minutes and do this. Just every couple of days. If you go down there normally and kind of put an eyeball on them, fantastic. You got a hot minute, go ahead and check it. They do something weird, go ahead and check it. It's not something to get super stressed over. You're going to monitor for pests, treat them as you need. You probably are not looking to start the whole circle of life in your house. So you want to be sure that you catch those early. Or if you're my age, there was a book about the lady who swallowed a fly, right? Remember at the end of it, she has to swallow a horse, right? So you don't want that. You don't want horses in your house. Harvest them whenever they get due. They will come into flower and get them down, which leads to one other thing. Plants inside don't have what? Pollinators, right? My husband will not allow a beehive in the house. I think that is so unreasonable. So you may need to be the pollinator for yourself, or you will need to have self-pollinating varieties. There are definitely self-pollinating varieties of cucumbers that are out there. Cool Jazz, I think, is one. Tomatoes themselves are self-pollinating. So you may need to go over there and, oh, hello. That's it. It's my timer to tell me that I need to remember to give the dogs pill. So that's all. Because if I don't have a timer or an alert for something, it is out of my head. So with tomatoes, you can do the pollinating by just giving them a shake, or you have a fan, right? The fan will help blow that air and will help those plants pollinate, right? Tomatoes self-pollinate. If you are growing squash or anything else, you may have to be a bee and dot pollination around. After you harvest what you've grown, remove everything out, discard or compost unless something weird happened, right? So if something gross happened or tries to eat your house or something, don't compost that one. But remove everything else, give everything a good scrub, give everybody a nice skitch with hydrogen peroxide, right? Skitch, 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 skitch. Let it sit for 10 minutes, rinse it out really well, let it completely air dry, and then you can fire up again. Make a log and decide and fire it up again. One of the most important things also you can do this will be an absolute, do as I suggest, not as I personally am able to do, keep a log, right? Here's what I liked. Here's how much nutrient I gave this guy. Here's how much nutrient I gave this guy on this date, and this date. So you know. That works out great. There are folks that once they really get into hydroponics, they really start kind of messing with the nutrient. They add a little more calcium and see if they get their tomatoes to get a little sweeter, right? They may add magnesium a little more and see if it does something else, right? So you can certainly do all that. But as you go through the first couple of harvests, you know, you may want to be vanilla. And then after that, go tutti frutti and do all that. Quick thing on microgreens. I want to toss up a quick thing because a lot of folks like to grow microgreens. It is not hard. It's very, very similar. It's also, of course, a form of crack heat. So you have a shallow container or a tray. On that, you need a little bit of a substrate. It can be a paper towel. It can be a mesh. They make specific meshes that work really well with dehydrators, if you've ever done that. Coconut core, a little bit of coconut core. People grow in sand. Any of that just sits there that will kind of hold the moisture there. Cover it with microgreen seeds. You can get microgreen seeds that are specific for that, or you can get seeds that you just like. If you really like little radish greens, get a packet of radish seeds. Melon seeds work out well, right? Because they taste really good when they're little and they smell good. And go ahead, spread them out. Go ahead and cover them with like another tray or lid because they need darkness for a couple of 3 days to germinate. Pull it up, put it under light, and in about 7 days, you will go ahead and you will have full-grown microgreens. Also, as you go, you know, as it's done, you will need to skitch it. There's not enough water in there, so go ahead and skitch with plain water to keep them kind of moist. And then they will go ahead and grow. And then whenever you're ready, harvest them off, toss the rest into the compost, and start again. These here are done in a deli container. I wanted to show kind of really cheap DIY ways you can do this. Are done in a deli container with little rocks and a bit of water. And this little container would have been a lot more full if I hadn't have dropped it. I didn't work out as well as I wanted. Just as they were germinating, I just dropped them.
What is it?
So,
Yeah.
these are just a little microgreen mix. They're arugula and radish. EC Common, just a quick chart, and I think you guys get access to this deck, and if not, I'll be happy to send it to you. This is just a quick chart to give you an idea of what EC runs and what pH runs on a variety of common vegetables that are out there. It's certainly not encompassing. It's hard to find a full-grown run of EC for vegetables. It just, a lot of folks don't have them. So kind of an aggregate right there. Some troubleshooting, things that can go bad. I talked to somebody, and I don't see him in here, who told me he had an outdoor grow this summer, and then partway through, everything started to wilt. And I suspect what it was hot. Water for hydroponics has to be under 80 degrees, or plants that can, oxygen goes out, plant roots die. It also needs to be over 60 degrees in order for plants to continue to grow and thrive. So if you are thinking about doing an outdoor set, right, that's going to be a real life hydroponic thing, or maybe just these and you're going to carry them out, just remember, once it gets hot, you're going to need to make sure they're in the shade. And just a few other things. Algae is the other thing that crops up a lot when it gets hot. And that's it. Any questions?
So it's just the water itself?
What's just the water?
It needs to be 80.
It's the nutrient solution that's in the system. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, is it just the water itself that needs to be under 80 degrees? And I think, if I understand the question right, the nutrient solution in the system has to be under 80 degrees.
So you could run it through a chiller if you were.
Yeah, you could do that. Sure, you could run it through a chiller and do that. Sure. Yes, sir.
How do you handle fruits that need pollination?
You're right.
That's all right. We stepped out. So either you can do a couple things. The question was, how do you handle fruits that need pollination indoors? The gentleman had stepped out when we covered it really quickly. There's two ways. One, you get self-pollinated varieties to start with, or two, you get to be a bee. So it's A or
Like they do in China.
it's A or B. Okay, that's the latest joke I made. But yes, yes.
I love it.
Or of course, if you have a fan, fans sometimes will help, but it won't help for things like squash or cucumbers or things like that, but it will help for things like tomatoes, peppers that are really close to each other, that kind of stuff.
Tomatoes are upside down.
Right, they are self-pollinating all by themselves, but they will pollinate better if you give them a shade. Gentle shade, not a. Any other questions? This is it's a lot of material. It's a lot of material all at once, and it seems really daunting to start, but it isn't hard. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, question I have is, do you think that growing hydroponically offers the same amount of micronutrients
Yes, ma'am.
as growing in soil?
Yes, ma'am.
Even though we don't have the microorganisms that we have in the soil nourishing.
I believe so. I believe most base nutrients cover all the bases of it. And it also has all the trace nutrients that you would normally have in soil that the plant would uptake. I also want to point out, if I forgot to say this earlier, hydroponics is not why grocery store tomatoes taste like shoe. That is not the reason why. Grocery store tomatoes, however they're grown, taste like shoe because they're picked green. And they use a cultivar that is built for very tough skins because they gotta ship them all over the world. So that is why tomatoes that I've grown hydroponically taste like tomatoes. So, and we haven't been able to find anything that says that it's better or worse to grow in soil versus hydroponics.
Okay, I just listened to a podcast from Sandy, and she was kind of talking about the comparison and drew a lot of parallels to vitamins being like inorganic fertilizers and how growing hydroponically can be, you can lose some of the nutrients, you can lose some of the micronutrients, but I haven't found any research either.
Yeah, and I haven't found anything.
Okay.
I don't, and there are people like Michael Pollan is a big fan of all soil charting, and I'm like, I don't know, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But it's a great question. Yes, ma'am.
I was gonna piggyback on that
Hit
because
it,
I have.
hit it, science girl.
The answer to that question is yes. It is possible for you to lose micronutrients when you're going from soil to hydroponics. That said, all soils are not created equal.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can lose micronutrients going from one farm to another farm and plant the same thing, put the same fertilizers in it and all that. So if it comes between feeding the masses hydroponically versus not feeding them in the soil, I'll take hydroponics any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I like your
Well done, absolutely.
Other questions?
Anything else? Millisiemens. I had to look it up. Millisiemens per centimeter is how.
What?
Millisiemens, S-I-E, pronounce, am I?
It's,
And
yes,
it's-
you're correct, and it's the name of a company that makes cuckoos for those equipment.
Oh, Siemens, yeah.
Mhm. You know, I didn't know that until right now. That makes so much more sense now, because I'm like, what a weird thing, and I'm gonna say that out loud in a group of people? What? Yes.
It's S-I-E-M-E-N-S, it's not.
Yes, it's not the one you think of, yes.
The most helpful thing was to keep the journal,
Yes,
to keep track of what you were doing, and because you're saying, oh, well, did I really do that? Did I really do that? If you have it all down, what you did, and then you say, well, this needs to be a little better here, a little better here, then you can have a starting point to go on from.
absolutely, absolutely, and one day that is a skill I hope I acquire, because I struggle hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's my overall, every year, that is my New Year's resolution, is to try to do a better job documentation, and I fail every single time.
Any questions on chat box?
All right. Miss Luann, did you have a?
Question about having the right amount of light
Yeah.
inside. Is, bulbs, is there a certain?
Usually a UV full spectrum bulb is what they prefer, right? The same kind you would use for any other plant or a seed tray or any of that. A UV full spectrum light bulb works great. And a lot of times they've got all the row of light that the plant's going to want throughout its whole growth and fruiting period.
We used LED lights that were made for.
that were made for
We
it
were
as
in a
well.
Very, very sunny south window and it wasn't enough.
So you had to go to light.
Especially in the winter, because there's no way you get 16 hours of sunlight in the winter.
That is true. That's true.
We don't get that. Years ago, just fluorescent lights.
Yeah, for best results, they recommend doing a full UV light. That way you get all the kind of good growth you want and they don't get leggy and they don't look spindly and that kind of stuff.
Is it for flowers too?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can, there are people who grow violas and pansies hydroponically, sure. Edible flowers, nasturtiums will grow this way. There's lots of choices. Anything else? If not, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming out. I hope it was helpful. Hope it was interesting.
You can come up here and look at Sandy's,
I
equipment
brought
up
some
here.
stuff.
We'll turn on the light so you can see it better. Her slides just show up, better with the lights down low. I just want to remind you that we've got a pop-up. We normally don't do a successful garden in December, but, got Terry and Janet are gonna talk about, seed collecting and saving. That will be here December 4th at 7 o'clock. It's in person only in December. So I just wanted to remind you about that. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Give Sandy another hand.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Let me collect up my spare rocks.
Yeah.
It was really